Do you know what propaganda means? It's when a cockney has a good look at something.
But
Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining. Well, hello, Anna.
hi.
It's easier to say hello to Anna. Welcome to Proper-Gander, everybody. All right, sorry, I get real awkward in front of the camera when I get directed to do things, and it feel real unnatural. So, but I really feel like I should do it. So do forgive me. I'm going to try again.
No, you're fine.
I'm just acting retarded. Right. Hello. Welcome to the Proper-Gander podcast. Today we are joined by Anna Holland. She is a 21-year-old English language student who threw paint over Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers. Thank you for the help there, Anna. Thoroughly appreciate it. So, Anna, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. First of all, can I ask you a little bit? I do want to know about the painting, but I also want to know about. I've got to go with the painting first. Let me write it down. Right, so the painting. So, can I ask you, why did you? I think it was you and Phoebe both did it, didn't you?
Yeah.
Right. So, what was the motivation behind you throwing paint over the sunflowers?
Well, as Just Stop Oil, we'd been in civil resistance against the UK government since October 1st, demanding that they end all new fossil fuel licences. And after 2 weeks of blocking roads around London and causing mass disruption in the name of our demand, we realised that we weren't getting nearly enough media coverage, because the only way we can make systemic change is if we make headlines first. So we realised that we needed to escalate our tactics. It wasn't enough just to block roads to make our demand. We needed to do something a lot more drastic and a lot more, as some would say, outrageous. And so we decided that as the suffragettes had targeted paintings in the National Gallery, as we had already targeted a few paintings through summer, last summer that is, we decided to go back to the National Gallery and target one of the most loved paintings in the world to make people finally stop and pay attention to us.
Right. So, So the motivation was to bring forth some sort of societal change. That is that right? Is that what? Was that?
Essentially, yeah. We need the government to end all new fossil fuel licenses because fossil fuels are the number one cause of the climate crisis. They're the number one reason why, in just a few decades' time, we're looking at millions of deaths and billions of climate refugees. And our government is still proposing to approve over 100 new licenses, even though they know we're in this dire climate crisis. They're pushing it forwards.
Right, yeah. So, but they have actually agreed to the Paris Accord. They have. This is, I've got to be a bit like balanced here. Like,
yeah.
They have agreed to make sure they bring down the CO2 emissions.
Yeah, so I was 13 years old when
Right.
they signed that Paris Agreement in 2015.
Right.
And I'm 21 now, and I'm still waiting for them to keep the promises that they legally said they would.
Right.
And in fact, even in 2021, I believe it was, our government were found guilty by the High Court for not meeting that Paris Agreement. So our government are criminals, and they're behaving criminally every day.
Right.
They don't act.
Can I ask you a bit of a different question then?
Yeah.
So you just said you was 13, sorry, did you say? Right. So do you remember that by doing the maths, or do you remember that because the information at the time had an impact on you?
When the government signed the Paris Agreement, that was when I first started paying attention to the climate crisis.
Right. So since you was 13. So what? That's pretty insane. So you've been studying this stuff for a long time.
I think it's horrible, and it's happening a lot among my generation. You know, we're being taught about the climate crisis in schools from, as young as 11 years old and the start of high school. I think it's horrible that children are losing their most formative years and their teenage years to this constant existential dread of the climate crisis.
That's very interesting. Did you hear about that poor young chap who killed himself, who was involved in all this sort of stuff? He was actually a activist, and he see no future, he see no hope, and he actually killed himself. I can't remember. I feel really bad because I can't remember his name. But this is the point. This is like it is having an emotional impact on children that are being taught it, and I'm not sure if that's the right thing or not. Like, because like you were saying, it has impacted you, and I should assume like it's had quite an impact on you because you're still doing it. Do you know, like
Yeah.
we're getting. Did you get arrested for the painting, by the way?
Yeah, I did.
See what I mean? You're putting yourself in the line of fire for something that you feel like is a morally just and righteous cause, which is admirable. But the thing is, like, is it fair to put that on the children? To me, that seems a bit like, do you know what I mean? Is it a bit like using the kids' emotions?
Well, I think it's completely unfair that, according to leading scientists, we're going to run out of clean drinking water by 2040.
Right.
Children who were born last year, by the time they are legally able to drink alcohol, they're not going to have access to clean water.
Right.
It's entirely unfair that our future's being taken from us by the older generations.
I get that, but having studied this stuff since you was 13, right, so 7 odd years, 8 years, without referring to what the leading climate scientists say or differing to, what have you seen yourself in the last, like, what out of your studies and following this sort of stuff, what have you seen that makes you believe like we are in an existential crisis?
Last year, we had a heat wave.
Yes.
For just 2 days in England,
Yes.
we hit 40 degrees.
Yes.
And in just those 2 days, 1,700 people died.
Right.
60 homes were lost to wildfires across all of Europe across that one summer.
Right.
20,000 people died. My own grandmother nearly didn't survive because of the extreme heat.
There's actually 2,500 people a week dying. There's an uptick in all-cause mortality in this country. 2,500 people a week. That's not like an isolated incident of a freak occurrence. There's like actually people dying with no sort of accountability for it.
Yes, but those 1,700 people who died in 40-degree heat, they died from heat stroke.
Right.
They died because of that heat.
Right. I get that. But at the same time, when you're saying things like this, it's hard to measure if that was going to happen or not anyway. Like, for instance, it's one thing to say it was 40 degrees and then this year we have another 40 degrees and then, right, obviously there's a pattern occurring here. But from what I've studied and what I understand about solar radiation, like, most of the warmth we get on the planet is from the sun. And I would think that solar flares and things like this could have an effect like on freak occurrences and things like this for like one day. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, this wasn't some cosmic freak occurrence. We weren't supposed to hit 40 degrees until 2050. This has happened because our dependence on fossil fuels is heating up the planet.
Though, Anna?
Every single scientist in the world. Have you read the IPCC report?
Yes, right. This is very interesting. This brings me on to a point. So, yes, I've got 3 versions of the IPCC report here, AR6, right? So I've got the policymakers version, I've got the longer version, and I've got the real version. Mm-hmm. So I've got 85 pages, 34 pages, and 2,000 something pages. Mm-hmm. And I was just interested to know, because, yes, I've recently brushed up on them last night, but I have read them before. So, like, because you do understand... First things first, when you're talking about this report, yeah, it says, based on scientific understanding, key findings can be formulated as statements of fact or associated with an assessed level of confidence, right? So what does that sentence mean to you?
It means that the IPCC report is comprised of scientific findings, which we are taking for fact because they've been peer-reviewed.
No. So I'll say it again. Based on scientific understanding, key findings can be formulated as statements of facts or associated assessed level of confidence. So for me, I'll explain to you what I think that means. That means it's either written as fact or opinion.
It's an opinion shared by 8 billion people who are going to suffer.
8 billion people that are going to suffer.
Yes, we are all going to suffer from the climate crisis.
That's not what it says in the report, though.
The IPCC report says that we have a brief and rapidly closing window to take action against the climate crisis.
Right. Okay, what part of it does it say that?
It says it's in the conclusion.
In the conclusion. Right, so but before you get to the conclusion, if you actually read it step by step, it explains to you that it's not all fact. Like, quite a lot of it's speculation, and even marks out what bit is speculation for you. But this is just to go on to like the language and how, because this, I believe it is convoluted on purpose. I believe that they do this sort of stuff to confuse people by design. They don't want people able to figure it out. For instance, like, people are asking why we're going through so much heating now, but we've just come out of an interglacial like ice age. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you're coming out of an ice age, you'd expect the temperature to get warmer. Do you know? Or not?
Well, you wouldn't expect the temperature to get warmer at such a rapid level that we're hitting temperatures like 40 degrees 30 years ahead of schedule.
Yeah, but this is what I mean, the schedule. So you're measuring it against the schedule, which is a bunch of, which is a model that has been put together, which is, so modelling, in order to get a model, you have to input certain parameters for it to be guided by. And whatever you input has an effect on the output. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. So there is I don't think the modelling's to be accurate, to be honest with you.
So are you disagreeing with a report that's been signed by over 100 different countries that our own government has signed approval of?
Right, okay. So the United Nations you're talking about, the IPCC, IPCC rather. Right. Do you know who J.D. Rockefeller was?
Yes.
Right. Do you know how J.D. Rockefeller made his money?
No.
Right. He made his money through oil and transportation of oil across America. Yes?
Okay.
Right. He donated the estate, the trust, donated 18 acres of land to the United Nations to have their world headquarters in New York.
Okay.
Living in a capitalist society, do you think reasonably there is any sort of inferences that may be drawn into the fact that an oil magnate is one of the key sole funders of an authority that is supposed to govern said industry? Does that make sense? Did that make sense, Jan?
Look, you can't disprove the scientific fact of what is happening.
What scientific facts? People are being paid to do a job. They're climate scientists. What are they paid to do?
Observe the climate science.
Right.
And report on it. They're
Right.
paid to predict what's going to happen.
Right. So just riddle me this then. So if there was no inherent climate crisis and there was nothing to worry about, what would the climate scientists, what would their job be then?
Well, if there was absolutely no climate crisis, then we wouldn't need them.
We wouldn't need them.
But there is a climate crisis.
Right. No, but hang on. But we're going back. We're having a thought experiment here, right? So we're thinking about what's going to happen to these people if there isn't something that they're being told to look for. And you said yourself we wouldn't need them anymore. So what that means
Are you suggesting that every single climate scientist is lying to us just for the sake of keeping a job?
No. I'm suggesting that people will undertake jobs and tasks in good faith, and they have every faith of doing something in a respectable manner. But the point is, I've got documentation of people that have tried to remove themselves from the report because they've come into the IPCC open-minded. They've tried to do a job, and then they haven't liked what they've seen. They haven't liked the way it's being spun, so to speak. And then they try to distance themselves from the report, but they're not allowed to because they've already submitted work towards the report, so their name's on it. This is the thing. So you're saying, dude, the thing is, there's 2,000 scientists across the globe that have got the same consensus. But the point is, people that are on the report, they can't remove themselves from it after they've submitted work on it. Does that make sense? So it's very well to say we've got 2,000, we've got a consensus. By the way, that's never how science has ever been done before, like a consensus. Like, that's not scientific, realistically, to argue for consensus.
Okay, so let's ignore the IPCC report just for the moment.
Yes.
You clearly don't like it.
Right. I've read it.
What do you make of the fact that one of our key spokespeople in Just Stop Oil is the former chief principal scientist for Shell? Why do you think he would have left one of the biggest fossil fuel companies to come and join an organisation taking active civil resistance against that very industry?
Yeah, but you say that.
If he didn't agree that Shell is profiting from the climate crisis, this is causing the deaths of so many people. You don't even need to read this 600-page report to understand that 1 million acres in Canada is on fire now.
Using that same logic, though, people like Klaus Schwab are actually funding Just Stop Oil, and they've got a whole reason for trying to stop everyone producing things.
Well, Just Stop Oil is funded by regular small donations from the UK public.
Right. And the Getty Foundation and Klaus Schwab, and it's all documented. We
get donations from the Climate Emergency Fund.
Yes, which they donate to.
Yeah, what they do with their money is completely their choice.